welcome to another episode of r/today I did an oopsie, tifu by kicking a chestnut, stopping traffic for an hour and getting cornered by a lynch mob. So obligatory this happened yesterday, but I'm still traumatized as I've never really encountered confrontation on such a big scale. So let me set the scene first. I live and grew up in a fairly densely populated city in Europe that has a good amount of nature patches. The people are genuinely quite friendly and usually not too short-tempered unless strangers, aka non-locals, are involved. The location of this FU was a pretty busy junction just down the road of my flat. Think 2-car lanes, cycling lanes, and pedestrian crossing. Anyway, it was just before rush hour, around 4 PM, and the sun was grilling everyone in Europe. Climate change. Yay. For the past 3 weeks, I was strolling down the road towards the junction, completely blanking my surrounding as I was trying to come up with the perfect dish to surprise my GF in the evening. Picture that quiet guy just minding his own business, head down, focusing on every single step. Yep, that's me. Suddenly, I bump my head into a rock, or so I initially thought. I look up. It was the largest man I've ever seen, about the size of the mountain from Got. He looked like a bodybuilder on steroids with a side of extra muscle. Let's call him Arnie. I was startled for a second before I see his buddy. Let's call him Sly, who was quite a bit shorter but just as wide as he was tall, so still quite intimidating for an under the radar guy like me. Oh, watch where you are going, I bellow. JK. Obviously Arnie did. So being super alpha and dominant, I mumble sorry and move around them to continue my walk to the supermarket. I mean, how the F was I meant to walk past them when they literally block the whole pavement standing next to each other? I think and kick a chestnut out of frustration, metaphorically releasing and passing on all my problems. And oh boy, that worked. Somewhat. What happened next I could not have imagined in 1,000 lifetimes. Hey, I mean, even with the current AI technology, I doubt they would have been able to predict that outcome. I see the chestnut flying Roberto Carlos style towards the junction. Hell, I heard the crowd roaring, and it probably even broke the sound barrier. While the chestnut was still in flight, I raised my hand in pride, having reclaimed my manliness with this superb treasure of a shot. And I'm talking the eager please pick me Keen Bean Susan from middle school hand raise. No, Susan Mayonnaise is not an instrument. Suddenly everything kept coming down. The chestnut flew past a motorcyclist, around 3 feet high, who must have registered some kind of movement in front of him, and he immediately hit the brake. Remember how I said they had nature patches in the city? Well, the city installed sprinklers to keep the grass hydrated and green. But they somehow have their own spirit and love releasing water into the most inconvenient directions. You guessed it. Despite almost 40 degrees Celsius, there was a puddle the size of a small American town right there in front of the braking motorcyclist. His braking turns into sliding, into rotating, into falling, and finally into that metal to asphalt screeching halting. Behind him, a red car doesn't manage to brake in time but does a fast and the furious drift and slides past the motorcycle, also coming to a halt in the middle of the crossing around 5 meters away from the motorcyclist. Then my attention is caught by the opposing lane as the red car just cut off a blue car's path, who does the same drift, thanks to the puddle, and ends up head on with the bumper wrapped around the traffic light post. By a miracle of God, or chance for the atheists, the post was harder than a dong after a 2-week dry period and withstood the incident without giving in. Yet the 10 or so pedestrians waiting behind it scattered away, with 2 stumbling over each other and falling flat-faced. What followed after this was the loudest concert of honking cars and screaming, followed by screeching brakes from all directions, and then a split second of silence, until I hear a majestic roaring that Simba would be proud of. Doo-doo-wood. What the duck? Yapani and Sly walk up behind me and instantly get the attention of about another 10 surrounding pedestrians that just at that moment exited the supermarket next to me. They start to explain what they saw to the others, me causing this accident on purpose and celebrating, and suddenly an elderly man, let's call him Miyagi, grabbed my wrist with the iron grip of a Cyberman. At that moment my life flashed in front of my eyes. My future, my spotless criminal record, my clumsy soap handling skills, and my virgin butthole. I was not going to make it a single night in prison. Suddenly the commotion starts. Picture a Real Madrid versus Barcelona team versus Team fight. All traffic stops. Everyone gets out of their cars and comes towards our little ensemble, shouting. I've never seen a crowd agree that fast on anything, but within 30 seconds everyone was pointing at me with red faces, anger in their eyes, and most of them looked like they were going to release their Super Saiyan form on me while I was still trying to flee Miyagi's claws. I know, statistically not all of them could have been Super Saiyans, but still. What I haven't mentioned yet is that I actually look fairly mixed race and live in a very white neighborhood. So within another 30 seconds many of the screams were more racist than incident related. Immigration and progressive Europe. Yeah. Throughout I just kept silent and head down as about 30 people by now were surrounding me, still triangled by Arnie, Sly, and Miyagi, so that my voice would have drowned anyway. After about another 5 minutes, which felt like an eternity, the golden opportunity arrived. I think Sly took some pity with me and signaled a countdown with his left hand so only I could see and pointed into his direction. I am no fighter, but I took one class of Wing Chun back in high school, and in a spark of genius it all came back to me that moment. Trap the dragon's head. The tail bites. Trap the tail. The head bites. As Sly got down to his last finger, I do the kung fu twist with my arm. Break Miyagi's iron grip around my wrist and start dashing towards Sly. For a split second I thought I'd run into a muscle wall for the second time this day, but in the last moment, he moved his 300 pounds out of the way with the swiftness of a ballerina. Damn, I was impressed. And then the sprint of a lifetime started. I was Powell, Bolt, and Blake at the same time. I ran like my butthole depended on it. Well, it kinda did. Luckily the mob never bothered to stand behind Arnie and Sly cause they figured I'd never get past them. So I didn't actually have to tackle anyone on my escape, no potential assault charges. Yeah, and continue down the road. I see some people follow me. Pretty sure they had no clue about the chestnut, but they just thought I was somehow involved. So I kept running and I had a good 100 meters head start. I was just in front of my apartment block when I had the second spark of genius of the day. There was no way I would show them where I lived. So I ran for another 10 minutes further than any man has run ever before, about 2 km, until I reached a park to lie down. I was pretty sure that I lost most people when I passed my flat. Thank God for the heat. But I had to be sure. I cool down and call my neighbor whose flat looks down on the junction. I told her the whole story. She's a super old family friend, and she couldn't believe I was the guy sprinting away. She was sunning on her terrace. Turns out the motorcyclist got up without injury and the blue and red car drivers weren't harmed either. According to my neighbor, the cops and ambulance were called and they took down the details of all drivers, moved the blue car and treated the 2 pedestrians for about an hour, while all traffic was stopped. Something I didn't realize from my POV was that a second mob formed simultaneously around the motorcyclist after the crash, who blamed him for everything, cause it looked like he just couldn't drive. And guess what? He was a foreigner, so that box was checked. His insurance will probably cover everything, at least that's what my conscience tells me. I haven't left my flat of fear being recognized at the supermarket. My GF was a bit pissed that I made frozen pizza, and I promised myself to never kick a chestnut again. TLDR kicked a chestnut, distracted a motorcyclist, got out of hand and caused a crash, got blamed by a lot of clueless people, escaped running, edit. Submitted this around midnight and went to bed to wake up to a blowing up inbox. Thanks guys. Also thank you so much for the gold. I put somewhere in the comments that excessive humor is my coping mechanism to deal with things. I apologize if that style really wasn't your jam and will work on semantics for the future. If you did enjoy it, you're welcome. We probably could make great friends in RL. And yes, English is not my mother tongue, and I live all around, so that's why my units of space and mass are very all over the place. Whoa, yeah, my day was boring. Yeah man, just once I would love to have this kind of thing happen to me. It makes for a great story. Well then, start kicking chestnut. Let's make this an idiom. Well, I like it. Oh boy, I really kicked the chestnut this time. You need to improve your situational awareness or you will not survive the zombie apocalypse. Tifu by catcalling my husband. Edited to add. Holy crap, this post blew up more than I expected. Thank you to the anonymous redditors that gave me my first silver and platinum. You are so awesome. Naturally, this did not happen today. Too long didn't read is at the bottom. About a week ago, I was running errands with my 1 and 3-year-old boys. We had some time to kill, and my 3-year-old said that he wanted to see his daddy, so we picked up lunch and took it to my husband's work so that he could have a hot lunch instead of leftovers from the night before. We got the boys out of their car seats, let them sit in our laps as we all ate chicken tenders and fries in the front seat. Then, my husband took us for a tour around his shop. He works in sheet metal and makes air ducts. Our kids loved it. As we were leaving, I saw my husband walking into the building and honked at him, calling out, "Hey, nice butt babe." Then it happened. My 3-year-old yelled, "Nice butt daddy," which quickly turned into "Nice butt mama." I tried my best to ignore it even though he kept repeating it. I thought that the worst was over when he eventually forgot about it. I was wrong. Now, almost a week later, he is yelling out our living room window, "Nice butt papa," what he calls our elderly neighbor. "Nice butt mama. Nice butt baby," his little brother. I don't think we will be leaving the house today. Too long didn't read I set a bad example for my child and now he is telling everyone that they have a nice butt. Tifu by using my parents' PC. Too long didn't read at the bottom. NSFW. This is still fresh in my mind as I'm typing. I take some time out of my daily commute home from night shift to make a detour and spend time with my dad, 71 years young, who spends most of the week alone as my mom, 62, works all day. But today was just a routine visit. My folks live in the country and don't have trash pickup, so I visit with dad while driving their garbage to the dump. As we are talking, I bring up a video I had seen and suggested I share it with him. He agrees, and once we get back to the house he suggests I find a video while he does something else. Comments Duckup. My dad has an older model desktop PC that is quite temperamental and only likes to use Google Chrome. I go to open a window and see that my dad has 20 plus tabs open. All of them with different profiles on FetLife. For those who don't know, FetLife is like MySpace for people with fetishes, bondage, waterworks, furries, etc. I just brushed it off as my dad being a dirty old man. Unfortunately, the tab I opened Chrome to was my parents' profile page. I not only saw my mother in very revealing garments, I also saw my dad gagged and hog-tied like a pig at a pork roast. So now, not only do I know my parents are pretty kinky, I also know what it looks like when my dad is getting stuffed like a Christmas turkey. Too long didn't read. Opened Google Chrome to share something with my dad, only to find out he gets butt raunched by my mother on the regular. Edit. Words. Edit 2. Wow, my first gold. Thanks stranger. Edit 3. My wife is a Reddit user and knows her husband posted this from the commute detail. She didn't believe me, so she temporarily created a FetLife account so I could, for once, be right. Now she is very distraught and has told me she can never look at my parents the same. What do? Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content. It's free and that's a great price.